Walking Dead Season 8, Episode 2, The Damned. This episode really surprised me. I actually enjoyed this more than I actually enjoyed the premiere, which was really good. I was surprised to see that they were kind of keeping things going. It made sense because of really how the last episode kind of ended off, and it was like, okay, it went right into some of the action stuff. They certainly could have thrown in some of the dialogue portions because naturally we still have whatever's going to end up happening with Morgan and Negan. Or not Morgan, Gabriel and Negan. So it was like, okay, that, I just assumed that that would be in the episode, and I was like, that I feel like that's going to be, whenever it comes up, I still feel like that's going to be a big portion where it's just them talking, and it's like, okay, let's see how this plays out. Even though it's hard to say if Gabriel will die in this situation, so I don't know if it'll be entertaining, sort of tense, like talking, or if it's just going to be like, we know neither of them is going to get killed off, so it's just them talking and it's kind of boring. So I'm kind of waiting for that, and I hope it's more tense and it leads to some cool stuff. But excuse me. In this episode, they kind of skipped over that. We might see it in next week's episode, but they are still going forward with all of the attacks. We pick up with everyone, where they left off in the last episode. So we have, Carol and Ezekiel in the kingdom, and they're kind of doing their thing. They're chasing down this person that, tossed a grenade at them at the end of towards the end of the last episode. So they're chasing him down the whole way through, and then we have Morgan and Jesus and Tara, and they're going through with the hilltop. There's always, sometimes I forget all the different names and who's who, but they're going through with the hilltop to one of the other bases, and they're taking people out left and right. And then of course we have Rick and Daryl, and they're doing their thing, and it was all entertaining. I was like, this is actually really cool. And then we have the rest of the Alexandria members, in Eric and Aaron and the rest of them. They're going through and they're taking out another outpost, and it was a really good episode. Like, it was very action packed. It was actually tense, and during some of the sequences where it was like, you don't know who's going to live and who's going to die. And I like that idea. I was like, all right, this is actually entertaining to watch, not just for the action, but because there's actual tension in it. Most of the people that do end up being hurt are kind of no-name characters, where it's like, oh, they had speaking lines and stuff, like the guys that were with Morgan. I was like, okay, they're just these two dudes. They're like the only ones. It was crazy. Like, they were the only 3 people that actually got hurt during that entire little raid portion. Not counting Jesus, like, freaking out for a minute because he believed that the guy was a good guy. So aside from that, those 2 guys seemingly were like the only ones that actually died during that portion of the episode. I was like, okay. And Morgan, as he mentioned, was like, I don't die. Sadly, they did. And it was a really good scene with him when they go through and they get all shot up, but he lives because he had the body armor on. So he wakes up and he looks, he opens his eyes and he looks, and the guy next to him is technically still alive. And it was like, oh, that's very interesting. And he didn't like give him any words, kind of words, or like finish him off or anything like that. He got up, he checked the guns, he took the guns, and then he was gone. And they had a great shot at the end where the guy's kind of looking at him, and you just see him breathing like his last couple of breaths as Morgan, he just takes off. And it was like, man, that was actually a really good moment. And then Morgan was like Terminator. He was just going like boom, boom, boom. He was taking everybody out, leading up to the end where Morgan's ideas, where he's having like these flashbacks of what Rick said. Morgan's current ideas where he goes back and forth. It's like, I snapped, and so now I no longer kill people, and I snapped again. Now I'm like full Terminator mode. So he's in kill mode versus non-kill mode at this point. So lethal options are definitely viable for him. And so he's going through these like weird little flashbacks of what Rick said to him about them being so capable and what they've learned that they can definitely win. And it's like, all right, I'm just going to go through, kill all these people. And then he comes out, and all these saviors are just held up because Jesus didn't want to kill them because, they actually dropped their weapons and everything. And so Morgan, and basically the people who were with Rick, like full on with Rick, is like, yeah, we're kind of in kill mode. This is like, our mission is to come here, kill these people. And it's like, you might have, Maggie on your side, but I got Rick on mine. And considering it's both, Morgan and Tara kind of being like, let's take them out, that might outweigh what ends up happening in the next episode. And ultimately we'll see. Based on the promo, it doesn't look like it's worth the value of keeping these people alive. Granted, I get why Jesus did it, because it's like, oh, they surrendered and stuff. But then it's like, you gotta play to win at this point. Like, it's getting real bad. And I'm sure something's gonna happen where more people turn to the side of, let's kill these guys. Because, like I said, based on the promo, they're gonna have all of these people as slow, chained up walking targets, and it's like, all right, well, we can't give them weapons because they'll just kill us. So we have to, fight for our own lives against all these zombies, and that will allow them to survive. It's like we're sacrificing ourselves because I'm sure somebody's going to get hurt because of this situation, and that's going to fall on Jesus because he was the one who was like, we have to, not take them down. And everyone, and Tara was like, she stopped putting up a fight. And it was like, all right, well, go your way for now. But in this next episode, I just feel like that's going to backfire on them. Mostly because it's The Walking Dead. It'll probably be, of course, no name characters that don't really matter. But still, people are going to die. Where it's like, these are the hero characters, and then the saviors are the bad guys. And that's just how it is. At least for the most part. They kind of touch on that a little bit with Rick's storyline. So we might get some more answers to that. But I'll save that for last. But I really enjoyed that storyline. I thought it was really well done. Then we have like the sort of standoff that was going like from the beginning to the end of the episode, and I really enjoyed that. I was like, okay, so they go through, they start off with this outpost, and as the woman, she gets on the radio and she's trying to call out to people, and two of the guys don't answer, and the third guy does, and she's like, okay, it's time to lock stuff down. Let's kind of end this out. And so we have, which is oddly enough, that was technically a part of what Rick and Daryl were doing, but they never interacted, so it was almost like its own storyline, even though technically they were in the same location. So it's kind of funny that they were there that whole time. And I would always forget until it cut to like Rick and Daryl, and I'd be like, oh yeah, that's where they are too, because it seemed like they were inside the building, and it just seemed perfectly empty, and they were hardly dealing with stuff. So you have this big standoff fight, and it's just bullets flying back and forth, and for the most part, the heroes were kind of doing good. Like, nobody seemed to really be taking any hits. A couple people do, of course, as the episode goes on. But for the most part, they're taking down saviors, and the woman doesn't realize what the plan is, and she's like, they're too scared to, kind of push on us, so we need to push on them and have them retreat. And that's not what they were doing. It's not that they were scared to do it. It was that they didn't need to. As long as they killed someone, like they shoot them up enough times or just hit them straight in the heart, it was like, boom, you're done. And then, of course, you'll become a zombie. And I love the way they did it, too. When she realized the plan, she instantly died, like, right after, because she was just looking to the left. And then, or I guess technically she was looking to the right. And then the zombie just comes up on her and just bites her right in the neck. And I was like, oh, wow. I thought she would actually be able to at least fight back. I thought, maybe she'd try to run. Maybe she would escape just because of the fact that she had so many lines. I didn't know if they would kind of keep her story going for, like, at least another episode. It was like, nope. She realized the plan, and then she looked over, and people were getting shot up, and she's like, oh, crap, they got us. And then it's like, oh, crap, I'm dead. So she was done, and a lot of other people were being taken out. And then it gets down to the end, and they were kind of teasing it whole way through. It was like, you have a couple with Eric and Aaron. And so Aaron is like far off to the left, and Aaron is far off to the left, Eric is far off to the right. The names are so similar, I feel like I'm just going to eventually mix them up. And Eric he's the one who kind of is working with a couple other people where they kind of go around to do the flank. And that works for the most part. And then as it gets closer to the end of the episode, a couple of people started getting taken out from the hero side of things. So it's like, oh crap, Eric's in danger. And I was like, all right, let's see how this plays out. Because I have read the comics, so let's see how this goes. And ultimately he gets shot. I would assume that he's going to end up dying, but I don't really know. It's hard to say because of the way they did it. I thought it was going to be a definitive thing where it's like, especially in the show, I would say his character is actually lessened compared to the comics. Like in the comics, even though the two of them are still smaller characters, they're both kind of equally small. I feel like in the show, they made Aaron like, Aaron is like a main character. He had like the whole, the thing in the beginning, which was just like all the slow motion beauty shots and everything with portrait mode. He has that, and Eric does not. And I feel like that's just Aaron being like far more important than I felt he was in the comic. It's kind of the same, like he is still, out of the couple, Aaron is like the more prominent character. But I felt like in the comics, because it's comics, so everyone gets like so much time. Even then, it was like Aaron and Eric were just like, oh, that's just the couple, and it's not that big of a deal. Like I barely recognize them, in the comics, where it's like I'm just kind of flipping through pages. And then if you aren't like one of the main characters in the comics, for me at least, it's like, all right, I kind of remember you, but not really. And then I have to like go back when certain characters die. Like when Eric dies in the comics, I legitimately had to be like, I think that's his name? I think that's who I think it is? Because I was like, that could just be one of the other pseudo-important characters that I don't care about. But I was like, I have to go back, and I was like, okay, that was actually his boyfriend. That's sad. That's how I felt when it was like the comic, because I was just flying through. And in this show, I feel like it's much more prominent simply because Aaron himself is more important. So it makes me take more notice of Eric. So when he gets shot, it was like, okay, this wasn't a definitive moment. It was he shot. He could die, but he could also live. He was shot in the stomach, so that being the case, that they could do a million different things. Where it's like, okay, well, he wasn't hitting anything vital, so it allows for him to survive. But we'll see how that ultimately ends up playing out, but that was kind of the big draw, was that he seemed like he could be mortally wounded because he was shot in the stomach and he was bleeding so much. They have the other dude who was like kind of with Carol for a minute, he gets like shot in the shoulder and stuff. So, we see like the pseudo important characters get wounded, but technically none of them end up getting killed. But it was still entertaining. I was like, okay, they're doing like this big firefight. It's basically a standoff because, there really is no push or pull. And ultimately, the heroes won, for the most part. We lost a couple people there, but in the end it was like, yeah, they definitely did a good job with that. So once again, really good storyline, action-packed. Lesser characters is like the least important characters, I would say, were solely based in that fight, but it was still entertaining. So I really enjoyed that. But that was really good. The inside of the compound was good. Carol and Ezekiel, I thought, was really well done as well, with the kingdom basically going forth, and Ezekiel kind of doing his mantra, and doing the theatrical stuff. And then when he and Carol start to kind of stay further back behind the main group, he's like, fake it till you make it. Like, I've already been this for such a long time, where my fictions become realities for my people, that's what I have to keep doing. Like, we can't, or at least I can't be the one to be like, man, this sucks, this might be really horrible, because then that'll, as the leader, that's, the trickle down effect, it'll just make everything so much worse. So he's like, I have to kind of keep up this facade, even if I don't believe 100%, which I kind of do. Like, he gives a real half answer where he's like, yes and no, no and yes, and then in the end, yes to everything. So it's like, he does fear, what may come, but is it his responsibility? Yes, it is. So it's like, ultimately it just comes down to it. It just is what it is at this point. So they kind of keep going. Ultimately, they take out the guy because like the backup group didn't meet them in time, and it's like, okay, well, release the tiger, and then they end up like Shiva just jumps on the dude and he's mauled to death. And it's like, okay, well, he's done. Unfortunately, he was able to contact his people, and everyone assumed that they were going to retreat, and Ezekiel says no. That I don't know, like, I don't know if he was a bit too cocky during that ending portion, because like the whole point was like, surprise. And the fact that they knew they were coming, I'm like, I don't think that's a good idea. Which, based on the promo, once again, it was kind of messed up, because they replay his words from this episode in the promo, where he's like, we won't lose any of our own, and it's him doing this because they got completely surrounded. I was like, that's kind of messed up that they did that. But that's kind of where things are heading. And I figured that's what would happen. I was like, he seems so cocky and confident at this point. It goes beyond him just kind of filling his people with hope. I was like, this just seems a little far. Like, once you lose the element of surprise, considering what they're doing with like everyone going to these different camps, that's a huge deal. Because if this falls apart, they would lose so many people, and it matters way more because they're like full on war effort at this point. It's not kind of like in between where it's like, oh, this is one incident and we can kind of recuperate after Negan, puts on a little display of power. This is it. Like, they are in the war. Like, if they screw up, that's a huge chunk of them lost, and that can affect the rest of the team. So I don't know if I'm 100% on this team. And then, of course, after the promo, it's like, well, now that I know they've been captured, I'm definitely not on his side about how cocky he seemed. But he takes the sword out, he unsheathes it from the cane, and he holds it up, and he does like just a nice little 360 there. And it's just like, like, I'm here as your leader. This is hope. We are going to continue our victories. We had one today, which was technically a loss. And we shall continue to have victories from this point forward. So ultimately, we'll see what happens. But based on the promo, and that was, like I said, before I even saw the promo, just based on this is a little cocky to me, I don't think that everything's going to work out so fine. Naturally, no-name characters, I assume, will be the ones that actually die. I don't think Carol will die. I don't think Ezekiel will die. I don't even think Ezekiel's right-hand man is going to die. I can't remember his name right now. But, you don't take out a dude with an axe. That's just really cool. So I don't think they'll get rid of him. Plus, he's really funny in general. Like, I hope he doesn't die, because that would really suck, because I like his character. But yeah, I just don't know how bad it's going to be. But it seems like, considering it's war at this point, aside from Jesus, who I really do think screwed up by saving those people and not just taking them all out, I don't think the Saviors are going to really be doing that. And I think it's going to be a mistake. And, we'll see kind of both sides of it with, our heroes being the ones where it's like, we're so good, we don't kill the villains when they give up, that I think will get people killed, when they're kind of trying to drag them all to the hilltop. And then we'll see the other side of it, of what happens when the saviors capture some of the heroes, and they won't be as nice. And they'll be like, they might not kill everyone, because of course, like I said, I doubt they'll kill the main characters off. That's 2 main characters, so I'm sure they won't do it. But some people are going to die there. And it won't be because like, oh, you guys gave up, let's take them here. Well, I mean, that might be a part of it, but I think that might have a lot more to do with the fact that they were already going towards a specific compound anyway. They might just be super close. That is clearly not the case with Jesus, where they have to do like the chain gang thing all the way to the hilltop. So I don't know. I think we're going to get both sides of that, and we'll see loss of good, the hero characters from both of those storylines in next week's episode. But then, of course, there is the final story with Rick and Daryl, specifically Rick, and it was good. Like, it was so simple that at first it was just them going through, and it's like, all right, we're going to search through this place, find these guns. Nothing's really working, so eventually they just have to, keep climbing up to the top. They get to the top, and that's where, they split up. And I knew something. I was like, it's The Walking Dead. It's basically, it's the TV version of a horror movie. Let's split up. It'll be easier. It's like, of course something's going to go wrong. So naturally, they do the dumb thing and they split up. Even though they're capable, they still do some dumb stuff and they split up. And so Rick ends up, he's traveling around through this building, and he comes across this guy, and they start fighting. And Rick assumes that he has the guns, and this guy does not. And so he's choking this dude out, and he assumes, like, he says something, and Rick is like, oh, the guns are in there. And so he tries to, kind of hurt him towards the room, and the guy kind of gets more restrained because, of course, we find out he's fighting for the life of his daughter. He just assumes this is Rick coming in to kill him, which I'm still a little confused. I have to assume that that dude was still a part of the Savior, so it's not like he was great to begin with for joining with them, but it was just an interesting thing where it was this weird moment where it was like, I had to, like, it took me out of the fact that that guy had to have been a savior, otherwise he wouldn't have been there. It took me completely out of that situation because it's like, it was still a dude with a baby. Of course, they do with a baby, a young girl even, so it's like, and that even greater connection to something that we currently have in the series with Rick and, of course, his daughter. So I thought that was great, and I knew it was going to end up being a kid because I knew he didn't say anything but Grace. I was like, he definitely just said Grace, and I was like, that's a girl's name. Like, there's going to be a girl in there. I was wondering if it was going to be like a mother and a daughter, but I was like, if it was a mother, then she probably would have come out to try to help, considering it's a life or death situation. But he takes the guy out, he's choking him, and then he realizes the spikes are on the wall, so he slams him onto there, kills him, takes him out. He takes him off. We don't really see all that, but he takes him off. Puts one in his head, I'm sure, gets the keys, and that's when he opens up the door, and it's just this little girl, this little baby, and her name is Gracie, and this little baby Gracie is just in the crib, and it's just like, oh crap, I just killed this guy who was trying to defend the life of his daughter, and it was just a crazy moment, and Rick sees that, and then of course they have a mirror, so it's like, what if I become, and then he looks right in the mirror like, this is what I've become, evil. So there's a nice little moment there, but I was like, that was pretty crazy. And then it gets even crazier because we have the father of the Morales family from the first season, which was nuts. I don't think this was the first callback either, because they do have a moment with Daryl, and me and my girlfriend were talking about it, because it was like this small room where it seemed like someone was handcuffed, and I was like, I thought it was a reference to his brother, because I was like, why, I felt like that was the only reason they had the handcuffs in there, is like on the chain, and they had like a little blood spot, because it looked like someone, it was like bleeding right where the handcuffs were, and I was like, I felt like that's what that reference was. It was almost like a double reference to what happened with Merle, and also what happened with Daryl, because he was trapped in like a small room like that. But the first thing I saw were the handcuffs, and I was like, I feel like that was a reference more to his brother than his time. And plus, I think that was why they had the other bits of food in there too, because I don't know why, but I feel like something with like a can of food has some odd connection to Daryl and Merle as characters, like when they were talking together. I don't know, but I feel like that was supposed to be that reference, was showing like the handcuffs and stuff like that, more than it was Daryl when he had his time being trapped with the Saviors. But I think it was kind of almost like a double reference, but I thought that was a cool little moment. I just wanted to mention that. I would love to know your thoughts on, like, what was the first thing that came to your mind when you saw that little room? Did you think of Daryl by himself, or did you think of Daryl thinking of his brother? Because that's the first thing that came to mind, was like, their handcuffs, there's a little spot of blood, or maybe that could have even just been like food from the can, because it's like a tiny little spot. But the first thing I thought was like, that makes me think of Merle, and I feel like that's what was supposed to happen, but I would love to know what the first thought was that you guys had during that sequence. But yeah, going back to the other definite connection to season one, the father of the Morales family, he is with the Saviors, and that was a pretty cool moment. He was alone. I would have to assume that that means his wife and children are dead. If I remember right, it was him, his wife, and I want to say they had 3 kids. I feel like they definitely had more than one. I feel like it was like they at least had 2 kids, but I want to say they had 3. So him being alone, I thought was a very interesting moment there. But it was pretty crazy. You know, I was like, huh, that's a heck of a twist. And of course, he's with the Savior, so now he's one of the bad guys. But I thought that was definitely a great moment. And Rick was totally out of it because he was almost like he was kind of breathing heavy, but at the same time, it was like he just they'd gone through so much. It was like, oh, like you're Morales, because of course it had been such a long time. They've gone through. I want to say it's not counting the actual years it's been for the actors, but within the show, I think it's still only been like 2 years or something like that. So 2 years is still a long time because he hardly knew that family. Like that was a couple of missions, and he never went on any of those missions with Morales. Like I remember his whole family stayed at the camp. So it was just interesting. It was like, that's like the one group that decided, we're not going to go this way. We're going to do our own thing. And they were just gone. It was like, oh, well, that's definitely something. So it's kind of interesting that that happened too, because there was recently news that they were officially going to do a crossover between Fear the Walking Dead and The Walking Dead. And one of the theories that came up is that maybe we'll see what happened with the Morales family. And now that they've had the father come back, it's like, people may not be so wrong about that. That might actually be how they do that crossover. And it'll be like a little mini thing where it's none of the main characters or anything like that. It'll be almost like an in-between story of what happened, after the Morales family left the camp. Which totally works, depending on how the characters in Fear the Walking Dead make it back to the States. Because I think it's been just enough time for them to actually do that. It's been, I don't know, it actually hasn't been that much time. I don't really remember, but it's been a little minute for them, so that's probably how they are actually going to do it now that the Morales father at least is back. So we'll see what happened in the tragic story, I'm sure, of what happened with his family. But definitely a good episode. Looking forward to the next one. I hope it kind of keeps everything going. The action's been good. They had a great emotional moment with Rick in this episode, even though there wasn't really dialogue there. Great moment for sure. We'll love to know in general what you guys thought about this episode, so please comment below. Let me know your favorite parts about it, your least favorite parts about it. And I definitely want to know where you guys think things are headed next for all the different factions within this war and how things will work, how they will not work for the heroes. And of course, I want to know what you guys thought about this episode, just in general. So please comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.